over to you, Diddo, for your case study.
Yes, cool, thanks. All right, this is my case study, which I did over the course of 8 weeks during the Pro MBA program. And basically what I started with was just a problem for a group of people that I thought is frustrating and we can solve. And what I did was I asked people on social media what are some of the big pain points they have right now, just to generate some ideas. And once I do that, there came a lot of people said that as we are working remotely and we don't see each other in person, they experience this lack of connection, not being social with their colleagues. So there came the problem statement, which I started with. And it sounds like this. I believe that remote workers who work in a distributed team are currently frustrated by the lack of social work life. Now, that was where I started. So the first objective throughout this journey was to actually validate whether that's an acute pain point and whether what I understand as the pain point actually is what or the people that I asked understand the same thing. So how I did that, I did some interviews with a survey that I prepared in advance. And then based on that, during the interviews, there came a lot of different comments and a lot of context that I could use to actually formulate my minimum viable offer, which is basically a one sentence that summarizes the core value in the solution. No, sorry, it's a sentence that summarizes which pain point you're solving for whom and how. And that's one of the difficult things. So it was one of the difficult things for me to do, because it turned out that the context revealed different things. For example, when I said social work life, people understood different things by social. And I think that was one of the very difficult parts to define what they mean by being social at work. And I realized that's a huge area. And that's just one example of what I was struggling with during the interviews. So after doing the interviews, pretty much I started revising my minimum viable offer. So you could see here to the right, new variants. It started becoming more like we help leaders in distributed teams boost team engagement through engaging online interactions, because engagement was also mentioned a lot. And pretty much once I had this revised MVO, I found out that I need to do one more iteration, because it also contained engagement, for example, and it's difficult to actually define engagement in different contexts, right? So after one revision, pretty much what I came up with and what was understood is we help remote teams boost engagement with personal, friendly video interactions. So that was something that was really difficult to understand, really easy to understand for whoever I'm talking to. And this is where I started. Now, what followed next was actually working to build the concept around the minimum viable offer. So I started with pretty much using the Blue Ocean canvas, where I put down some of the differentiators compared to what companies use now in terms of online interactions. So now they use Zoom, Teams, Meet, Slack, a lot of different solutions. But what became clear when I used the Blue Ocean strategy canvas was that there could be some differentiators, right? So for example, a lot of those solutions don't offer any kind of way to bridge this social distance, right? They're general purpose online meetings and used primarily for work. You can't express emotions in them except smileys. You know, if you switch off your camera, you pretty much are very difficult for people to understand, especially how you feel. So there came some of those differentiators, which was a good part of the program that helped move the minimum viable offer from a just sentence to a more solid concept. And then around that, I also built my story. So that helps a lot, I think, to first to be able to tell that story when you pitch to someone, because you know, if you don't think in a structured way, you end up rambling or not being very clear and concise. Preparing that actually helped me a lot, especially when I interviewed people for product market fit later, and also when I prepared the prototype of the solution and especially the landing page. Now, next, pretty much, as I said, I prepared the landing page. There, I told the whole story. So once I did that, I showed that landing page as something more tangible to some potential users. And after that, I refined a little bit the wording as well, right? So we started talking about boosting the mood in teams. We started talking about specific ways that this could be done. So we entered more into the solution phase rather than the concept phase. So it became clear, for example, that people would expect, or the three most often mentioned things when it comes to boosting the mood in teams, especially in distributed teams, are being playful, being creative, and celebrating together. So games, celebrations, and doing creative projects together outside of what you do every day through online meetings. So this is where the solution started. After I showed the landing page and we started talking about what this might be. And then from there on, there were a couple of things. Let me see. Yeah, so I started putting down a more tangible roadmap for where I want to start and where this solution should go after several iterations. So, for example, what I wanted to start with was this very basic functionality of being able to do a social call with a colleague, whether to play a game or be creative. And then afterwards, with time, to do whole events with a lot of teams and people and specific functionality, but also at the end, even become a platform for integrated with different types of, for example, games providers and so on. Now, one important fact here that I want to mention is that it was great to also put key results and KPIs when I did that, because it kind of focuses the thinking into what you need to have inbuilt in the solution to actually achieve that result. So if you want to have 1,000 social calls, if you want to book them one by one, that's going to take a lot of time. So naturally, you want people to share and recommend. So this result can be achieved only if once they use your product, they're satisfied and they give a good rating and they recommend. Right. And then at the end, I built a no-code prototype in software. That's the substance behind the landing page, where the product was, they could use the product. Now I'd say it's a really lean version. For example, games are links that lead to websites where the game opens for you and you can play. Celebrations are, for example, some playlists with fireworks and so on. So I got to be really creative, but what I managed to accomplish is that I didn't have to write any code. I used design in software out of the box, which really, I mean, I did that in maybe 4 or 5 hours, including the research for games and songs and so on. And that really makes a lot of difference instead of hiring an engineering team to actually code for 3 months, right? And then what I did afterwards, I sent a link to that to 5 people that wanted to test it. So they went in, they were able to go to the games, play some of the games either alone or with their colleagues, and they gave me some feedback on how to proceed, right? So they gave me some feedback on first that they like it and they definitely want to use it for a long time. Then they gave me some feedback on what they think is the main benefit, which actually confirmed a lot of my assumptions yet again, connected to the minimum viable offer. And then I got some great ideas on how it can be improved. So, for example, one idea was actually directly corresponding to my roadmap to integrate with, for example, Steam and use games from there, which would be great. And then the second one is to be able to send calendar invitations within the product, which corresponds to the idea in the roadmap to actually organize whole team events, not just one-on-one interactions. So I think that's the end of it.
Awesome. Good. Also, let's go through some feedback for the case study itself, and then just some talking points. You know, some things that I think I've picked up over the 8 weeks that I'd like you to focus on. Okay, so I'll go through quickly feedback on the presentation. Do you want to go back to, just as I mentioned each slide, just skip through if you could go back to the problem. Perfect. Great. Yeah, I thought you gave very good context here about, you know, why we talk, like, what are you talking about? Why are you telling me all this stuff? Good context. You stated the problem very clearly. You highlighted simple things like visually highlighting are really powerful. You know, people don't listen much, particularly in a big meeting. So highlighting key points. If you put a visual in, do explain what it is. So even if it's really simple, it's like, you know, for example, at the bottom, here is my the thinking behind trying to sort of dig in to find an acute niche. Obviously, we've got time pressure, but you can mention it briefly. Next slide. So onto the MBO. Yeah, good. You obviously, I mentioned it before. Pause to explain what it is and why it's important. I thought it was really nice that you shared your learnings as well. I think it's a key part of storytelling. You know, it shows also that implicitly shows the value of product discovery. If you go to the next slide, you know, you talked about, you know, we discovered that people define social differently in a work context. So that led us to the, you know, this idea around team engagement as a better term. It's awesome storytelling. It shows that, hey, if we didn't do all of that work, like we would have got started in the wrong place. Good. Next slide. I think you did very good bridging here. So what do I mean by bridging? You connected, okay, what came before with this slide so that there's a logic. Really important because we're also using OKRs here as well. So they should connect. You know, once we completed these OKRs, then we went on to the next one. So you said, you know, once I got this MBO, you know, from doing that discovery work, I, you know, came out with this MBO and wanted to validate that, ... Good, next slide. I thought it was great where you, yeah, you talked to the blue ocean. That's really important, and how that fed into the unique part of your unique selling point. You're showing, like, here's where other people are operating, here's where we operate. Really powerful with stakeholders as well, this framework. Everyone likes a good graph. Looks more convincing, but also more important, it's good for you, your clarity of thought, right? As I'm sure you found by doing the exercise. Yeah. On the product story, again, you brought that personal learning in. I liked that you talked about, you know, this helped me be more concise actually when I was interacting with potential customers, for example. So great to bring that in. If you go to objective 3, this was the only weak part. No, yeah, this is the only weak part. There's another criticism I've got, but it wasn't. I know, because obviously, like we've, I've followed what you've been doing the 8 weeks. I don't think this would have been clear to me if I hadn't had more context. It should always be clear. Someone should be able to turn up here with no context and understand exactly what you're talking about. For example, objective 3, test the mood boosters and validate value and feasibility. Right, and non-product people's got no idea what you're talking about when you say validate value and feasibility. And secondly, test the mood booster. Again, it's not clear enough. Basically, you're saying test our value proposition, brackets, increase mood of teams, for example. And then, again, give a bit more context when you're mentioning validate value and feasibility.
Good point.
And there was no bridge to this as well. For example, it sort of appeared, rather than something like, once we were clear on our unique selling point, I wanted to validate that we were moving in the right direction, right? That what we thought was unique is actually unique. That's why, for example, we built a landing page and tested out to see if 10% of visitors would join our beta waiting list. We did a lean canvas strategic roadmap to just see what might this look like as a solution and as a business. Right, see the difference there, clear hierarchy of what I'm talking about. Yeah, you should be getting this stuff from all those management consultancy days. Objective 4, if you just skip forward for me. Yeah, good. But anything I felt here, don't apologize for it being a lean prototype. You put it in you framed it as a negative, and it's a huge positive. Because what are you doing now? You mentioned a few things later. You just explain the challenges. It's like, okay, we couldn't build custom games, so there were all these technical challenges. So here's how we overcame them. We built a really lean prototype where we simply had an interface with software and we linked through actually to external games, but it felt like an end-to-end experience. And then you did a good job, but you did it too late. You sort of said it as all negative, and you talked about the learnings, the fact you saved 3 months of engineering time. Any sort of C-level person is going to go, sweet, they're doing the maths there. Well, that saved us like 50,000 euros. So do it as a positive, because it is a positive, right? You're focusing on learning and not on building something that looks fancy. Next slide. I thought you came back really strong here with really good storytelling around this testing phase. And more importantly, was the work itself, right? So that there was great alignment between the offer, right, what you're promising somebody, and what you actually delivered with the prototype. That's the foundation of success, right? If you've got something that you're offering and people are interested in and you're actually delivering, keep iterating. You would with this is the kind of thing that could become a great business. It genuinely has potential as a good business, and you just would continue in that direction. Good. Just zooming out from the case study in terms of just, long-term feedback. I mean, nothing major in your, I think you always bring a really good energy, great contribution. We've integrated a lot of like software. I love that mirroring technique used in the discovery calls. So you're always up coming with good energy. I think that's not a fluffy thing, right? I think that's a key part of stepping up actually from managing people, where it's sort of more, I feel, about clarity and trying to group people and get people together, to being the one that people look up to. Your strategic work's been very good. Again, the work you've just showed me with the delivery of the solution plus the MBO was good. You found a really clear open space as well. I think 2 areas to improve upon, and feel free to jump in on anything you think you could improve upon. I think first one is storytelling. It was good, but keep practicing that. It is so important in a remote context, because when you're presenting an opportunity or an initiative, you've got to get people excited. They've got to understand all the important parts. Like, why are we focusing on this USP and not all these other things? Drill that home with stories so that they remember it, so they don't, a week later go off and build a product completely unrelated. So keep practicing storytelling, reading some, happy to always send you some books and suggestions on that as well.
Sure.
And secondly, you linked that just clarity. You know, I think you're good. Your level of English is excellent. But we can always get better. You know, clarity of communication. The objective 3 was a bad example of that. Right? Where I think you could have done a better job. You should have done a better job. Clarity of writing, clarity of communication in any way, just again, so that everyone understands what's actually important, because the more senior you get, you're going to say few things, but they have a bigger knock-on effect.
Every sentence counts.
Yeah, you send something quickly on Slack and suddenly 50 people are working on the wrong thing. So you have to really push yourself on those things. Not you're good, but to take you to that next level. Any sort of thoughts or anything that you think you want to take forward, you want to really work on in future?
I mean, your feedback is fair. That's also what I'm constantly trying to improve, and that's why I also studied writing, because if you want clear thought and understand and being understandable, then you should try writing.
100%.
Yeah, so that's why I'm practicing a lot. So that's fair. And I've identified that as a downside or something to improve on. Otherwise, I think what I really like and I feel quite better at is strategy and also what sits behind that, because as a senior product manager, you mostly work on features and roadmaps, and of course you have strategy, but you're not the one defining the strategy for what you're gonna do. At least it wasn't in my case, but I suspect it's that for a lot of people.
Most cases as well.
Yeah, but now I think I feel quite confident that if I have to go either to work on an existing product or start a new one, I feel comfortable on where to start and how to come up with a strategy. So that's a big positive for what you're doing. That's something you delivered on what you promised.
Good. Glad we delivered something. That's the key thing, right? Is we talk about fast tracking you to head of product, and you can't go from senior PM to whatever the level up is without that strategic, not just knowledge, right? Because a lot of people can go and do an MBA, but being able to translate that into a roadmap and different teams and ultimately results, right? That's the key thing. If you get that right, everything else will click into place. You can learn everything else along the way, but that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, honestly, pleasure having you on the cohort. And I think the next steps you did is you're going to have a good career, whatever you do. I think it's just, if you want to really step up and eventually lead your own, whether it's your own business or a large organization, keep doing what you're doing. Keep pushing yourself on identify weaknesses. Ask for feedback from team members, from your boss about that. Where's an area you think I could improve upon, as you've done with writing, and you'll keep improving that way. And I've got excited to see where you go really in your career. Yeah, and big thank you to you, Henry, for the whole learning experience. I think it's great. Awesome. I like it. I would definitely recommend people that are, by the way, willing to do the work, because I think a lot of people want to transition into that step that we're talking about, but probably not willing to do the big work that's behind this. Improving yourself, pushing yourself. That's a whole other habit. So great. And I think especially there are some things that you said during the program that I still remember, and I've put on sticky notes. Like one of them was, most senior positions are about bringing order to chaos. And I always, when I interview with somebody, I put that sticky note, and I'm like, whatever I do, I have to explain to them how I bring order to chaos. If they don't walk out without knowing how I bring order to chaos, then I haven't told my story, right? Nice. Yeah, good. Yeah, I think if one thing you take away, if I'm somewhere in your mind, pushing you to improve on things, then I'm happy. I think we've done our job properly. Awesome.
Sure.
Well, look, I'm sure I'll see you on some online event, or I'm sure we'll hopefully get if we get a few more customers from Bulgaria, then
Sure.
I'll come out and we'll do a meetup as well. I'd love to visit.
Sure, yeah, I'll definitely post some stuff. Let's see.
Mhm.
Great. Well, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, we will do. Enjoy as well. Have a good evening today. Speak soon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.